Hey everybody, this is Townsend. Thank you so much for tuning in. The goal of this podcast is to cover a vast variety of topics regarding mental health, struggles, share people's stories, and hopefully remind you that you're not alone. I hope you enjoy. All right, so this is my buddy Jess. We're going to chit chat about grieving. So something that everybody goes through, and I feel like we're never really taught what healthy grieving is, but we all go through it. So I thought it was super important to bring it to the table, chit chat about it with a licensed professional counselor. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Jess. Tell us what your title is, what your experience with mental health is, why I got you on here, girl.
Okay, I'm a licensed professional counselor and also a clinical supervisor here in Arkansas. And I have worked in a variety of settings, therapeutic settings, since 2008. But now I have a private practice in Fayetteville, working on a book about grief, and I'm currently working toward getting a certification to be a certified grief counselor.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked about it earlier. What are the steps into getting a specialty, especially in something like grief?
Yeah. So basically, I'm going through a program where there are 4 classes, and each class is about 30 hours of work, take tests and stuff like that. And yeah, and then I'll be a certified grief counselor.
So very cool. So you can treat like focusing on everything, but grief is your main like specialty, right?
That's right.
Cool.
I ain't specialization yet, but that it's definitely, a lot of counselors kind of go toward um, something that they're passionate about, and grief happens to be one of mine. And so, and basically all counselors are trained to help people in grief. But I've found that not, excuse me, not all therapists really want to do that. It's actually pretty hard work in terms of the amount of emotion that's involved. But it's interesting because I think it's because it's a passion of mine. I actually feel energized when I work with people
Yeah,
that
I
are.
imagine it's a pretty daunting task, but rewarding at the same time because I feel like you can definitely see the lines between somebody struggling and somebody getting better, like seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I feel like that'd be cool, but really hard because I give counselors so much credit because I just can't imagine. I love it. I am crazy interested in mental health, people, community, but I feel like I have my own stuff to deal with, so I can't imagine like carrying everyone else's burden with me, even though I'm a 6 Enneagram, so I do it anyway and I don't get paid for it, but that's a different topic for a different day. Okay, so what made you, I know you kind of said it was just an area that you love, but what made you choose grief? Like, why grief? That's such a, gosh, I don't even know the word to use. It's such a hard subject, one that we're all scared to kind of deal with too terribly much. So what made you focus on that?
Right. Probably the catalyst was losing my mom in 2014, in October of 2014. But I've also had a lot of loss in my life that starts way back when I was like in 5th grade. I lost a classmate, and then lost my grandmother, my mom's mother, in 1999. And she was everything to our family. She was the sort of the one that kept everything going. And when she died, people in my family were like, we just need to be upbeat. We need to remember her happy. We need to remember happy memories and stuff like that, which is not a bad thing. But there are people like me who are very sensitive, and it's hard not to cry and feel all those things. And um, so anyway, that grief, sort of the grief about my grandmother, sort of got stuck in me, actually, and I think of a lot of people in our family because we didn't really deal with it, and it was. I mean, I carried that around probably for like 10 years until I was in graduate school and kind of broke loose as I was studying my family. And so I was like, I do not want to do grief like that again. Um, and when my dad died in 2008, I was like, we're going to do this differently. And we did do a lot of things differently. And then when we lost my mom, we definitely did things differently. It was very much about, like with my nephews, it was very much about allowing every emotion to come out and to talk about it. And even still now, like when we talk about her, sometimes we'll get tearful, and it's that's okay. Um, like I think I just wanted to normalize that, and into my professional life, I just wanted to um, take what I've learned as both a person and a professional, and just help other people with it. I think
Yeah,
my mom was proud that I'm using something that was so devastating to me, um, in a way that's helping other people.
absolutely. We talked about this, but I feel like in America, we're raised to kind of push it under, swipe it under the rug, like we've got work to do. I actually, when my grandmother passed away, another story, um, it was really interesting because a family member, she passed away on a Friday, or we had the funeral, everything like that on a Friday. Everybody's super sad. The entire family is in town. And then one of the family members on Monday was like, it's time to get back to work. Like, why are we still sad? Let's keep going. And that really brought to my attention, like, how America functions. And we aren't raised to know really how to healthily deal with grief. And with age, I've kind of learned, like, you just kind of wing it the best you can. And there are moments for me, I lost Terrence. Um, I told you this story earlier, but one of the biggest things for me was I booked a gig, and our bodies are our biggest reminders. And I didn't even know that was a certain date. I didn't know anything was going on. Booked a gig, got on stage. My mind was numb. There was nothing, nothing. And I just had to stare at the lyrics, read them word for word, because I couldn't focus on what song I was singing. I couldn't focus on the notes plus the words plus the presence of the people. Is really weird. It's something I hadn't experienced before. And it's because I wasn't taught that your body's a reminder of traumatic events. And it happened to be around Terrence's birthday. And so I remember coming home and being like, what is my deal? Like, I'm so in a fog. And when I looked at the calendar and really took time, it happened to be an important event. And so I feel like reminding people that things like that happen, and that's totally normal. You're not crazy.
Right.
um, let's kind of go off of that. So we talked about stages of grief. People talk about, you've got 6 7 stages of grief. You're angry, and then you're in denial, and then, all right, so true or false, there are stages through grief that you're going to go through.
Right. Actually, healing from anything, and especially with grief, is not linear. It's more this. I've got this handout that I give to a lot of my clients, and that I share with other counselors when I teach about grief. But it's like this swirling kind of vortex of, you're going to go through, denial and sadness and anger and stuff like that, but it swirls back. And it takes a while for it to kind of swirl and like come out, into different ways of thinking and being and feeling. But yeah, it's not exactly linear. It's not linear. The woman who talked about stages was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and her original kind of the group that she was looking at was people who had found out that they were dying. And so, in that context, there probably are a little bit more like, stages in terms of like denial and bargaining, and I can't, please don't let this be happening, and sadness and anger and all that. And later she wrote a book, excuse me, called On Grief and Grieving. And she talked about the stages that she talked about in the original book were not meant to be like a roadmap to healing, that somebody should follow, so that it's not, like, oh, I'm not doing it right if I'm not doing it in this order, because it's not like that.
Yeah. I feel like people took those stages as like set in stone. So it's crazy to see. She was like, no, 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 y'all read this wrong. You didn't read the fine print. It
Right.
really wasn't for you day to day. So what are some coping mechanisms? This is kind of where we left off earlier. Some coping strategies or mechanisms that people could use for grieving. Like, what are some things that are going to help them out in that moment?
Right. I think that one of the most important things is for us to actually feel the feelings, right? To not try to push them down. So, and you know, there are emotions, a lot of emotions actually, that people call wrong emotions or bad emotions or whatever, hard emotions. It, you know, and they're not bad. They're um, just difficult, like anger and sadness and stuff like that. And so, yeah, just being able to feel it and, um, you know, give yourself space and time to actually feel all of it. Because if you don't, like I was talking about my grandmother, like if you don't, it sort of it can get stuck, and then it kind of gets complicated and complex, and often that's when somebody needs to see a therapist. Is, you know, just I can't seem to, you know, I'm just stuck in one of the hard emotions a lot of times, you know, and they can't function like they need, like go to work and go to social events and those kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that can happen for me. I slip it all under the rug, fake to smile, so fake it till you make it. And what ended up happening is it started like bubbling out all my orifices, so my ears and my nose and everything. And I just started having bouts of like I would be really short fused, which is not like me at all. I would be, I had some bouts of anxiety, which is also not really like me to have anxiety to that degree. And so I realized like I wasn't facing my feelings at all. I was just sweeping them under the rug. And one of our favorite books, Jess, you know, I got to give a shout out to, is Untamed. So Glennon Doyle, my favorite thing that she says in there is that feelings are meant to be felt, and that's why we have them. We're human beings. We have these complex emotions, these complex feelings, and we just try to ignore them. We try to numb them with social media. We try to numb them with all these vices and things like that. But they're meant to be felt. And I love how you say grief is not linear. I imagine in my head this just like bird's nest of messy wires everywhere, because that's how grief is. Like some days you're good, you're gold. You used earlier the analogy of the ocean, which I love. And so sometimes the ocean is going to be really hard and it's going to knock you off your feet. And then sometimes it's going to be kind of calm, and that's normal. It's normal to have those days. So I love that you talked about that. Um, so what are some common things you see when people come in? So, like maybe some common signs that people are grieving pretty badly.
Yeah. um I think probably the most common one is that people just can't, they do get stuck in something like sadness, like a lot of crying. Again, um grief is not a mental illness, so crying is normal. Feeling anger, feeling all these things are normal parts of grief, but just like they can't, like they're crying so much they can't go to work, for instance, or they get anxious, or they get depressed, or like you just said, you know, someone who isn't short fused is, you know, as a result of their grief, really sort of lashing out in ways that just aren't like them. And yeah, I think that those are probably the two big ones that I see in terms of, you know, or sometimes people, it's interesting, sometimes people come in and say, you know, I had this loss and I don't feel anything. And they're worried about it. And to be honest with you, that could be part of, you know, a normal grief process, is that it maybe hasn't completely hit you yet, or whatever. So, and everybody does it differently. Everybody grieves differently. So I just don't want to pathologize normal grief, because it's not. We all go through it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's go back. So we were talking about coping strategies and everything for grieving. Do you feel like journaling is a good one. So you were talking about feeling your feels, spending time, like you had a good support system of friends. So I was talking about if you don't have that good of a support system, some people are like hardcore journaling is a great way to do things. Do you feel like that's good for people going through grieving that may or may not have friends as an option?
Yeah, for sure. I think that journaling is good. If you like to write, I think journaling is good. I think, um, some people like to create art. I know that you create music, and that you did create music out of your grief. I still do, actually. One of your latest songs is about, the next steps on your journey, after losing Terrence. And so, yeah, just connecting with something that makes you feel alive still. There are a lot of communities have grief groups through hospice. So that's sometimes an option, and the ones here in Northwest Arkansas are free to people. So that's something to look into. And like we were talking about before, I mean, even if it hasn't gotten quote unquote bad, you still could reach out to a counselor if you felt like you needed to talk to someone about, you know, how hard it's how hard it is for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey there. Thank you so much for tuning in to You're Not Alone with Townsend. If you're enjoying these live streams and podcasts and want to see them continue, head over to patreon.com/townsendtmusic. Your support means that the research and time and effort that goes into each one of these episodes can continue, and we can reach out to more guests and do more awesome things in 2022. All right, back to the conversation.
So what would you give, let's say, we talked about earlier your time frame of grief. There's not a timeline on it. So for me, I've experienced a lot of people, friends or loved ones going through a hard time, and other friends being like, okay, it's been too long, you got to get out of the house, and like trying to force people to do things or drag them out of the house or whatever it may be. What would be your advice to loved ones of someone struggling or going through grief?
Yeah, this is complex because sometimes people do need to get out of the house, right? Like if it's gone on too long. But kind of early on, I think it's just really important. I think that presence is what's more important than anything. Like, I think a lot of people, when someone's grieving, they sometimes avoid them because they don't know what to say. But what I've learned is it's not really about saying the right thing. It's about actually being there with them. And one of my best friends, we got the cancer diagnosis. We were walking outside the hospital. She was actually in the room when we got the cancer diagnosis. And and we were walking outside, and both of us were just, our heads were spinning sort of, and neither one of us really knew what to say. And she just put her arm around me, and that spoke volumes about like, I'm here with you. I don't know what to say, but I'm here with you. And that, yeah, that's, I still remember that moment 7 years later, like it was yesterday. I was going to mention too, there's some really great books on grief as well, back to like, if people don't have, access to a counselor or other kinds of support. David Kessler is one of the kind of leading names in grief, and he actually worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who I was talking about earlier. So he's really accessible. There's also a book called "It's Okay That You're Not Okay," and it talks a lot about what I was just saying. Like grief is hard, and we don't really want to feel it. We certainly don't want to lose our people or things that we love, but it happens. And this book just really goes into the fact that it's, we don't have to have it all together, and we're not going to have it all together.
Yeah, I feel like that could be the title of your book.
Yeah.
Grief is hard.
Grief is hard, exactly.
Yeah. So
right.
What's really cool is later when I do another live stream with you, you're going to have your book, and and we're going to discuss about your book and how this researcher Jess talks about grief. That'll be cool. That'll be a cool thing. All right, so we kind of talked about this earlier. When would you say, if you had to put a timeline on it, when would you say would be a good time to reach out to a professional? Like, I know everybody's a little bit different. We've talked about grief is linear. There isn't really a timeline, but if, we did one on postpartum depression. And so the statistics talk about typical postpartum things go on, the baby blues, for a couple of days, maybe a week. Well, once it reaches further than a week, 2, 3, 4 weeks, that's when you need to start looking into maybe getting some professional help. So as grief being your main thing, what would you say for people maybe this far out, maybe look into reaching out to somebody?
Mm-hmm. And again, this is sort of complicated, but first of all, the first year of, after you lose somebody, it's just going to be hard. We lost my mom. It was right before Thanksgiving. It was like a month before Thanksgiving. And so going into Thanksgiving and Christmas in 2014, it was awful. And I was I just was in this, I couldn't believe it. And she was she did so much of the cooking and all that. She loved holidays and just, it was just devastating to go straight into. And that's part of why the fall and going into winter, it's just like, and the holidays are hard. The first holidays, your birthday, their birthday, if there are big events like a wedding planned, or, there's just so many things, especially in the first year. And I would say a lot of people are able to sort of navigate grief. They just know that it's going to be hard and stuff like that. And they just do it. And I wanted to say too, that grief is not a mental illness. It's natural and normal. But then, like I was saying before, I think when we get to a place where we just can't function, we don't want to go to work, or, we've just isolated ourselves, or we're even, sometimes people lash out, like they may not be able to feel the sadness. And so it comes out in anger. So just when it sort of turns into something that is really not themselves, like I was grieving, but I was still myself. I was just sort of a numbed version of myself. But yeah, if I couldn't go to work, if I'd been in a place where I couldn't go to work, or I, I didn't ever want to go out with my friends, which is very much not like me. That would be a time when I'd be like, I really need to go see somebody,
Yeah. So studying grief, I imagine that's changed your perspective on life quite a bit. And I know obviously going through grief yourself, but studying grief, so reading about it, researching, doing all of these things, how has it changed your outlook on, one, life, and two, on grieving? So I like how you said grieving isn't a mental illness. And that's a lot of my live streams. Like, you think like anxiety, depression, a lot of those things can not be a mental illness. They're just natural human reactions to things. And that's the point of this, is kind of to beat the stigma and let people know it's okay to grieve. It's okay to have some anxiety. It's okay to have some, depression around certain things. Now, obviously, there's a whole different aspect where it does go into the mental illness, but that's a whole different conversation. But it's healthy. These things are what we do as humans. So all that to say, how has studying and like putting your mind into grief changed your outlook on both grief and life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing that I've learned in studying grief is just the complexities of it, and the complexities of our emotions, and and that it is so, so normal. I mean, we all go through it, right? Not one of us is going to get out of this life without some losses, and some of us with really, really significant losses. And so I think that, yeah, the complexities of it, I've learned a lot about, just different ways of looking at mourning. And like, for instance, sometimes people need to be able to, like, actually spend some time and kind of what we talk about, like, sit with those emotions, just really be sad or angry or whatever. But then also kind of that, on the other side of it, just kind of making sure that we're taking care of our daily tasks and stuff like that, kind of getting, quote unquote, getting back to normal as much as we can. I don't think that there is a normal, but like just getting back to a sense of feeling grounded and all that. So that there's this interplay between allowing it and then also, continuing to live. And I would say, yeah, the lesson I've learned, or the biggest lesson I've learned, from loss and studying loss and going through loss, is that life is extremely short, and we need to really be living it to the fullest. And my mom was only 66 when she died, was pretty young, and and it's about 17 years till I'm 66. And so if I only have that much time, I want to fill that up with love and friendship and connection, as much as possible, and going after, like, these big goals that I have for myself. I just don't want to be at the end of my life and on my deathbed going, why didn't I live? I just don't want to be there.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it did for me. So grieving kind of shined the light on life, oddly enough. So it's really sad and you're grieving, but for me, it was a turn of events as far as I grieved. And then one day I was like, holy crap. It was almost like it slapped me with reality of, what am I doing wasting my time grieving and worrying? And not to say that I won't still grieve, and not to say that I don't still worry. I'm only human. But I mean, I took a nosedive into music after that, thinking I only have this one life. Like, who cares if I can't pay my bills? No, I'm kidding. No, but yeah, like, if I love music and I was given this gift of not only a story to share, but music to play and these lyrics to write, I might as well share it, right? Like, you only live once. Why be stuck behind a cupboard, a little cubicle at a work desk, a work office? So that's kind of what it did for me too. All right. So if people are grieving or they feel they know somebody in this stage, what would you advise them to do right now? Like, where could they turn? I know you kind of gave something earlier. So what are some places, some resources that they could use in that time?
Mm-hmm. I think, if they feel like they need to see a counselor, obviously, I think that counseling can really, really help. But sometimes, again, people don't have the resources for that. And so, the books that I mentioned, doing your best to stay connected with, people who love you, and forgiving them if they don't say the right things. And just, just realizing that, you're not alone. Like, we all do grieve. You may be grieving at this moment, but there are a lot of people around you that have grieved or are grieving right now.
Yeah.
Not
You
alone.
are not alone.
Right.
Awesome. Jess, it has been a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for joining me. So one, I always say this, during my live streams. Like Brene Brown says, it's not word for word, but basically we're not here to be right, we're here to get it right. And so when we talk about grief, although you're an expert and you're learning all of these things, everybody grieves differently. So what we say is not written in stone. Of course, this is just our outlook and our experience. So take it with a grain of salt. Take these strategies, these things that we've told you, and try them out. Maybe it can help you out, but just remember that you're not alone, that grieving is okay, crying is okay, but we got to get up and we got to keep living. So Jess, thank you so much for tuning in with me. It's been a pleasure. I've been looking forward to this one for a long time.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody that tuned on, I hope y'all have a great evening, and Jess, we'll have you back on when that book's written.
Oh yeah. All
yes.
right.
All right, y'all have a good one.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. If you enjoyed this conversation and are interested in becoming a sponsor, feel free to shoot me an email at townsendtmusic@hotmail.com or shoot me a message on any social media platform at Townsendtmusic for more information. I would love for you to become a member to help spread awareness that you're not alone. If you're looking to buy or sell, I have the perfect realty company for you. Clark & Co. Realty is located in the Benton, Bryant, Arkansas area, and they understand that buying or selling a home is more than just a transaction. It's a life-changing experience. That's why their team of highly seasoned real estate professionals is dedicated to providing exceptional, personalized services for all their clients. They truly take great pride in the relationships they build, and they always work relentlessly on the client's behalf to help them achieve their perfect real estate goals. They always have the client in mind, and I can speak firsthand when I say how reliable, trustworthy, and quick they were. When I was looking to buy my first home, they were there with me every step of the way, answering every question I could think of. They showed me a great amount of knowledge and patience through the process. It's no wonder they've won so many awards for their outstanding services and their excellent relationships with clients. So if you're looking to buy or sell, there is no better option than Clark & Co. Realty. Okay, here's the best advice you're going to get today. If you're driving through Conway, Arkansas, swing by Cross Creek Sandwich Shop. Honestly, talking about this sandwich store is making my mouth water. My personal favorite's the turkey bacon wrap, and I can't leave without buying their homemade strawberry cookie. If you haven't tried these, you are missing out. Now, they have all different options for sandwiches, wraps, salads, desserts, soups, so swing by. I promise you'll thank me. If you're looking for the perfect place to relax and unwind after a long day at work, you want to grab a cold drink with a good friend, a good community, Lucky Lou's is for you. It's located in Little Rock, Arkansas. It was founded by two friends sharing the same dream. They wanted to make a place where everyone would feel comfortable and accepted, dogs included. They wanted people to feel a little bit like they were back home. So grab a friend, grab a dog, or 12, and head over to Lucky Lou's, where you can make your own luck.